Why shouldn't we use the term factory farming?
So the term factory farming is a really powerful term, and it has done its job. It has really exposed the animal agriculture industry for the horror that it is and has become, that these animals are commodified, they're just used like machinery. And so factory farming, it's really made people wake up and be aware of what's happening in the industry. But what's happened is there's also been, because we've been successful in exposing animal cruelty because of the undercover investigations in these dairy facilities and slaughterhouses, people are seeing what's happening to these animals and they're concerned. Also, antibiotic use, the impact on the environment. There's so many reasons that factory farming has become really a household term, and people want to do something about it. Well, the industry is giving them something to do about it, and that is that they're shifting their rhetoric and they're shifting their language and labels to things like organic and free range and cage free and sustainable. We're seeing all kinds of labels. And so people suddenly have an option and they think, well, my meat isn't factory farmed, I get it at Whole Foods. Or my eggs aren't factory farmed, they're free range. So there's this distinction that's happening now, and we have to be careful because these labels are so poorly regulated. They mean very little. The animals are still suffering. So I really feel at this point we need to start saying that all animal agriculture is cruel. All animal agriculture causes environmental destruction. All animal agriculture, needs to be avoided. So we just need to be careful with our language because language is so important. And I think that factory farming really no longer necessarily implies a vegan message or an abstaining from animal agriculture message. So we want to be sure to have that awareness that all animal agriculture is the impact, and that reducing and eliminating animal products and going vegan is the best thing we can do.
What is speciesism? Why is it important to live in harmony with other species?
So speciesism is just like other isms that you can think of: racism, sexism, homophobia. These are oppressions where it's believed that one, in this case, species, is dominant over another or more important than another. And of course, where we apply that worldwide is the human species being dominant and oppressive to every other species on the planet. So we definitely want to be aware that speciesism exists, that speciesism is really inherent in everything we do, in our language, in our culture, and it's detrimental to our society. We actually right now are in a pandemic because of speciesism, because of our connection to wildlife trafficking, going into wild places, exploiting the wildlife there, and bringing them into society to kill and eat and butcher. And that connection causes infectious zoonotic diseases, which is the pandemic we're seeing today. And animal agriculture does the same thing. When we confine animals and we're in close contact with animals, and it's stressful situations for them, again, we're causing diseases, not only infectious zoonotic diseases, but also chronic degenerative diseases in our bodies. So speciesism is so linked to so many things. Our oppression, our domination of animals is not only harmful to them, but it's harmful to the planet and it's harmful to us. We're all connected. So we really need to recognize speciesism, recognize that it is harmful, that it is a system-wide oppression that's connected to all other oppressions, and that we really need to fight against it, and know that non-human species are deserving to live free of human-imposed suffering and death.
Why do so many people never want to discuss or think about how animals that are raised for food are treated?
I think that really the bottom line is because people love animals. Most people love animals. And we have this inherent nature of loving animals. Children love animals. So we don't want to see them harmed. And I think that because there has been this growing awareness around animal agriculture, that we know that something is not right about it, something is going on, that's not healthy and not good for the animals, not good for the planet. Yet we're so interconnected with it. We're eating all day. We eat 3 times a day, and so I think people they're concerned. They're scared to learn. Like you hear people say, "Oh, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it." And I think that's natural. It's a natural reaction because I think they know that it's inherently wrong to kill and eat animals, and that would make it so that they would have to change something in their lives. I think we need to not be afraid of the change. I think we need to realize that changing our diet to a plant-based diet is really not dramatic and huge. You can still eat things that are familiar. You can still have full, wonderful, satisfying meals. So there's nothing really scary about it. And then that consciousness raises that compassion. You get to really to embrace that compassion that we have for animals, and then it's better for the planet, better for our health. So I think that hopefully people will be more open to hearing about these issues, because it's very important for the sake of our planet, if not for our own health and for the animals.
Why should we care about animals? We have to eat and we need to feed 7 billion people and we need to keep the economy going. So, what choice do we have?
Well, if we want to feed those 7 billion people, and we're actually coming up on 8 billion pretty soon, the population growth is really exponential. If we want to feed all those people, we are going to need to transition to plant-based eating. It's just, and across the board, you hear this from the UN and from all kinds of governmental bodies and the World Health Organization, all kinds of government and worldwide agencies that are looking into this, looking into the sustainability, looking into climate change, looking into how are we going to feed everyone on this planet. And again and again and again from these studies, we see the recommendation of reducing animal products, eating more plants, eating more fruits and vegetables, transitioning to a plant-based diet, because that's the way we're going to heal this planet and be able to feed everyone. I mean, that if we want to feed everyone, plant-based is really the way to go, because it uses so many less resources, so much less water and land and all of that. And that we're going to need to transition to a plant-based diet to feed the world.
Isn't it natural for humans to eat animals? And haven't we always?
So um, with what is natural, we really don't want to, I don't think that we want to make our moral considerations, our ethical choices around what's natural. That it would be a very different human society if we looked to non-human animals as what to do. We wouldn't be living in houses. We wouldn't be going to the bathroom in toilets. We would, there's a lot of things we do that are not natural, and that's not necessarily that they're not healthy or they're not good. So it's a tricky argument, and what we're finding, though, what's very interesting is that science is telling us that our bodies actually react better to a plant-based diet, that our bodies do better, we feel better, we live longer, we live healthier on a plant-based diet. So doesn't that seem natural? I would think that we'd want to do what's best for our bodies. And then in reflection, wow, how wonderful that it's better for the animals. It's better for the planet too. So many great connections around plant-based eating. So I don't think we need to look to what's necessarily natural, but what's best for us. And so eating arsenic, that's natural, but not good for you. So plant-based eating is really, ultimately the best thing we can do for our bodies, for the planet, for the animals.
Do you think pigs, cows, chickens, and turkeys are too dumb to understand, feel, or even care about pain, suffering, and loss?
So this is what people want to believe is going on with pigs and turkeys, that they just don't really understand or know what's happening to them. Unfortunately, that's not the case at all. And just like our dogs and cats at home, how we know the dogs and cats that live in our lives, that live in our homes. We know when they are sad, we know when they're hurt, we know when they're suffering, we know when they're happy, we know when they're joyful. You know, we can see those emotions in them. It is the exact same with pigs and chickens and turkeys and goats and cows. These animals and fish as well, these animals have the same capacity for pain that we do, the same capacity for fear and anxiety that we do, that our dogs and cats do, and for joy and for forming friendships and having complex emotions. We're learning so much around these animals with science and with observation. There's now thousands and thousands of animals in human care on sanctuaries where these animals have been rescued and they're being taken care of by people. And the stories are just amazing. The stories of, the friendships that are formed, and animals that have friendships, and then one will be separated or one will die and the other will grieve and grieve for their friend. Uh, all kinds of amazing stories around the complexity of their emotions. So yeah, no, they are not dumb or unfeeling as many people believe. And I think that they want to believe that because they know that these animals are suffering terribly in animal agriculture, in the confinement and indoor conditions and brutality, and the workers shoving them and throwing them. So we want to dull ourselves and believe that they're not experiencing that, but they are. They're experiencing every one of those miseries, every one of those intensive emotions. So what we can do about it, there's something we can do about it, and that's to reduce or eliminate our animal product use and go vegan, because then we're not contributing to their suffering, and we're contributing to them living full, beautiful, healthy, happy lives.
Does the USDA and the United States government make sure animals raised for food are treated well?
Well, no. Short answer is no. The longer answer is that, animal agriculture is a business. It's animal agribusiness, and it's in place to make money. That is the bottom line. That is the reason that it exists. It's not to care for animals. It's not to raise animals. It's to make money. That's their reason for existing. And they're going to do anything that they can to make as much money as they can. And what we're learning and what we now know because of undercover investigations, because of seeing this industry for what it is for the last 30, 40 years, we now know that to make more money, the animals they suffer more. They're confined more. They have terrible, bodily mutilations that happen to them, like debeaking and dehorning, because of the tight confinement, because they want to make money on these animals. So the USDA, the other regulatory agencies, there is practically no laws that are in place to protect these animals. And actually, any statutes that are on the books for animal protection, federally, state, local, generally farmed animals are exempt from those laws and regulations. So what would be done to a dog or a cat in someone's home, and that person could get fines and jail time for abuse, neglect. The same thing happens to cows and pigs in animal agriculture, and it's just business as usual. These people are making money on it. They actually get a paycheck for abusing the animals. So, no, there's no regulations and no protections for these animals. It's really a brutal system, and the laws protect the money makers. The animal agriculture industry is protected from the abuse that they perpetrate.
Which labels should I use to decide if meat is grown ethically? Should I feel good if it says organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, free range, access to outside, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, natural, or something like this?
It's a lot of labels, huh? Yeah. So this is actually an area of my expertise. I've written a book on what I call the humane hoax, which is all these labels that you were just talking about, the cage-free, free range, organic. And what I found after digging deeply into this issue and interviewing many people, going to farms, researching, it's really disheartening because most all these labels, there's zero regulation. I mean, no regulation at all. No on-site inspection of the farm, no regulatory body that's really looking. Basically just the farmer can fill out a form, send it in, and then it's approved. There's no on-site inspection to see if he's doing what he says he's doing. So unfortunately, these labels mean practically nothing. It's very different from farm to farm what you're going to find with these labels. Now, something like antibiotic free, sure, the animals are antibiotic free because there is probably some testing that proves that they're not giving them antibiotics. However, what's going on that farm? So here's a good example of how these labels can hone in on one thing, but then there's larger issues to think about. On organic dairy, so organic dairy production is so intensive. The cows are, kept pregnant their entire short lives. It's filthy, it's confinement, it's stressful, and they often get sick. And dairy cows are pretty much famous for getting mastitis. Mastitis is an infection of the udder. The udder can swell. There can be open sores. It's just a horrible, painful thing to get for these dairy cows, and many of them do. So the commercial dairy industry, the conventional dairy industry, gave cows antibiotics and other pharmaceuticals to clear up the mastitis. Okay, well now the farmer has transitioned to organic, and he is not allowed under those regulations to give the antibiotics to the cows, so they just don't. And the cows can linger in pain from this mastitis that just gets worse and worse. I had a veterinarian confide in me that he saw cows on organic dairies that had the worst cases of mastitis he'd ever seen, with udders that were swelling, very, very painful when they were milked. And this was on organic dairy farms. So actually the cows were suffering more in organic dairy and antibiotic-free dairy. So again, these labels mean so little. Cage-free is another example. I'll just give quickly. Cage-free. So this is where with these egg facilities, egg-laying chickens, the chickens are not in the tightly confined battery cages where they're just stacked on top of each other, and that's the conventional method of raising chickens for eggs. So they're taking them out of the battery cages, putting them in these floor confinement buildings where there's just thousands of birds on the floor. And depending on the barns and the situation in the farm, it can be worse. These chickens can be, so tightly confined. They can peck at each other. They are, they have no sun on their bodies, no ability to do natural behavior like dust bathe, and they live in utter misery in these tightly confined barns. Yet they've got a label, cage free, which is making people think that everything's fine now. All problems have been resolved. But there's just one aspect of their life that has changed, and that's is that we've gone from a small cage to a big cage, and that's it. Every other misery that they endure is still happening to them. They're still killed at a very young age. They go to slaughter at a very, very young age. They're dying of ovarian cancers and problems, and sickness and disease. So the labels, unfortunately, mean very little. My advice is to not waste your money on these labels, because you're going to have to pay more and you don't know what you're getting. You don't know if it's any better. The best thing to do is, instead of switching from one label to another or one type of farming to another, is to reduce your amount of dairy, reduce your amount of eggs, and eventually transition to a vegan diet.
What makes you think a mother cow, pig, or a chicken has any idea of how her babies are treated? Animals don't talk, so we really don't know how they feel. Who says separating mothers from their babies is upsetting to them? Again, why should humans care about this?
Well, why we should care is because we are affecting their lives. We have control over their lives and their agency, and so we should care what's happening to them. And this issue of the separation of families, this is one that really touches my heart, and I think is one of the worst things that happens in all of animal agriculture. Any of the farming that we think of with animals, there is separation of families. And I'll give some examples. In egg and chicken flesh production, both for the chickens that are raised for their flesh and chickens that are raised for eggs. No, okay, so what's the natural way a chicken would have babies? She would make a nest and she'd sit on the nest and then she'd lay the eggs. Do you know that a mother hen and her babies start communicating while they're still in the eggs? They coo and cluck to each other. There's vocalization that happens even while they're still in the eggs. And when they're hatched, she keeps them warm, she keeps them close, they're protected, they feel loved. There's this wonderful bond that happens between chickens and their chicks and her chicks. And there's even the trope of the mother hen, the mother hen dutifully caring for her chicks. So that image that you have in your head there, that is natural, normal, what should happen for these animals, right? Never does that happen in any animal farming, in any animal agriculture, no matter the label. Even with free range and cage free and all that, no farm can profitably hatch their own chicks. It just can't be done profitably. So they source chickens, all farmers source chickens from hatcheries. And hatcheries are these big, industrial, brutal, horrible places where the eggs are hatched in metal drawers. And as soon as they're hatched, they're immediately thrown on conveyor belts and metal machinery, and they're thrown around like canned goods. And there's no comfort and love of a nest. There's no warmth of a nest. There's no love from their mother. There's no protection, no gentleness, that is all taken away. These babies are orphans. They're lost. My mentor, Karen Davis of United Poultry Concerns, she's also my boss. I love her very much. And she has a wonderful story of a chick in the field where a mother hen has been separated from the baby, and the baby is crying out and wanting her siblings and her family. She's scared, and it's the same as a kid that gets lost in the mall, and is crying for mom. And as soon as the mother came and they were reunited, it was like this, oh, thank goodness, we're all safe, we're okay. All those babies, those millions and billions of babies that are born into the chicken egg industry, the chicken flesh industry, they're all lost. They're all scared. They're all crying for their mothers and their siblings. And they never ever find them. They never ever have the relief of feeling safe. It's just horrible. Another separation of families, it happens in the dairy industry. And I'll just go over that quickly. As soon as, well, the, 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 the dairy industry, of course, a cow can't produce dairy until she is pregnant, just milk. Of course, lactating mothers. It's the same as any other mammal, human, other non-human animals. You only give milk when you're pregnant and have given birth. So they keep these mothers pregnant, and as soon as, and that isn't through artificial insemination, which is another horror unto itself. And as soon as the babies are born, they're dragged away from the mothers. The mother is bellowing for the babies. The babies are crying for the mothers. It's such a horrible scene to witness, and there's lots of video. Too much video out there of these horrible scenes of the babies being dragged away from their mothers. There's a story of a woman who lived down the street from a dairy, a small, just a local dairy that had maybe 200 cows, very small farm. And one day she heard the cows bellowing so horribly and so mournfully. She thought they were torturing the cows. So she actually went to the farm to see what was happening. And these mothers, the farmer said, "Oh yeah, well, we just took the babies away. We took the babies away from these two cows," or however many were. And she couldn't believe how they were crying for their babies. So it's really a tragic, horrible thing that happens in all animal agriculture. And this alone should be a reason not to support it. This alone should be a reason to never eat dairy, eggs, or meat ever again.
No animals are killed for me to eat or drink milk, cheese, and yogurt. So isn't it really okay for me to continue consuming these products?
Well, that's unfortunately not true, actually. In the egg industry and the dairy industry, those animals go to slaughter at a very young age. No animal in animal agriculture lives their full lives. And for a dairy cow, she'll go to slaughter in really what's the human equivalent of her teens, pretty much. Same with egg-laying hens. What happens is the farming is so intensive on their bodies. They're having to be kept pregnant. The conditions are so miserable and intense and stressful that, like for a dairy cow, her milk output will start to decline. After just a couple years, her milk output will decline, and it's what the industry terms dried up. And she will be sent to slaughter because they have been keeping her pregnant. She's had a number of babies, 2 or 3 babies, and those babies can be raised to give milk, the females. The males, unfortunately, and this is just an aside, but the males in the dairy industry are worthless and to the industry, and they are killed by the millions as babies, often for veal. But now that there's no veal industry because of the cruelty that we have exposed as activists, unfortunately, they're usually just killed on the farm. They'll sometimes just be separated out, the baby males, and left to starve and just die. It's horrible. But so, yes, unfortunately, all these animals die. There's no retirement plan for cows. There's no retirement plan for egg-laying chickens. As soon as they are not giving as many eggs as a younger chicken, they go to slaughter. And how they kill them for the chickens, it can be very brutal. They often don't send the layer chickens just to the slaughterhouse to be slaughtered for meat. The quality of meat is not going to be good. So they will sometimes just bury hundreds of thousands of chickens alive on the farm. They will gas them to death, put them in huge containers and pump gas in. There's all these brutal, horrible methods that they will kill layer chickens, chickens that are bred to lay eggs. And dairy cows as well will go to slaughter. Oftentimes, dairy cows are used for low quality meat, like, meat in canned soup or ground beef is often dairy cows. So these animals never see a full life. They live a short, brutal existence.
I only eat fish, so I don't need to learn about the treatment of animals raised for food, right? Do they even feel pain?
So fish are really what we're often calling now the forgotten food animal, because we don't talk about them enough. We don't recognize or see them enough, and it's true that they are separate from us in that they live in the water, so we don't see them. We can't really interact with them the same as we can with animals like on, say, a sanctuary, farmed animals on a sanctuary. So we don't think about them as much. We don't acknowledge them as much, and that's really unfortunate. It's really terrible, but that is changing. The animal advocacy movement, we're seeing an awakening of attention and acknowledgement of fish and the importance of fish, and that, it used to be that the only time we really heard about fish was in the context of the environmental piece of veganism and animal agriculture, and the overfishing of the oceans, and that's very important too. I mean, that's absolutely important, the impact on the oceans for fishing. But what about the fish? What about the individual fish? And we're learning so much now. Do they feel pain? Yes, absolutely they do. We're learning through science that fish feel pain, both behaviorally and neurologically. They are experiencing pain. So neurologically, same kind of activity that's happening in the brain that happens to humans, that happens to non-human animals, that happens to aliens. We're seeing this cascade of electrical activity to the brain, and not only to the hindbrain and brain stem. These are the parts of the brain that are reflexes, the reflexes in your body. But so it's, activity is going there, but also activity is going to the conscious sensory perception parts of the brain. So they are perceiving the pain just as we do. Also behaviorally, they act the same. They will sometimes thrash about or rub the infected area, the affected area, or they'll just lie still. And then when painkillers are introduced, like they put morphine in the water or into the fish, then those behaviors will reduce. They'll go back to normal behaviors. So, and the science that is coming out now is just amazing. Just the last 2 decades, there's been a great deal of science on fish, and not only in the realm of pain, and that question has been answered. Science is absolutely, as 100% as science can be, that fish do feel pain and experience pain, but also that they are very complex cognitively, that they're emotional, that they have relationships, that they have preferences, that they are little individuals, just like every other animal on the planet. And we're learning so much about them. And I'll wrap up by telling this story because I love stories, and this is my favorite fish story. So there were two goldfish, a black moor goldfish named Blackie, and his tank mate was Big Red. And Big Red was a big orangish, beautiful red goldfish. Now Blackie was born a little wonky. He couldn't swim properly. He kind of just hopped around the bottom of the tank. He couldn't really swim up. And when it was feeding time and the food, was put in the tank at the top, Big Red would swim down and pick up Blackie on his back and swim up and let Blackie eat the food. And then he'd gently put Blackie down, and then Big Red would go and eat. So what's happening here? Big Red is showing such complexity. He is showing compassion, generosity, letting Blackie eat first, caregiving, taking care of Blackie, friendship. Are these attributes you would have ever thought of for a fish? Probably not. But now you know Blackie and Big Red's story. And so we know that they are sentient, that they are conscious, that they're individuals, that they're aware. How can we cause the suffering and death of trillions? I mean, it's trillions a year of fish that are killed and caught in the oceans and on fish farms. It's really it is becoming unconscionable now because we're learning that they are individual, amazing creatures, and we really should stop killing and eating fish.
What is a fish farm? And is this the future of fishing? Is it a good solution?
So fish farming is unfortunately on the rise. It is very popular. And no, it is not better, unfortunately, at all. In fact, it's worse. It's worse for the fish. It's worse for the environment. It's basically industrial confining and farming of fish, the same as land animals. And we know that confining and intensive farming of land animals is bad for the animals, for the planet. Well, the same thing's happening on fish farming. So with fish farming, what they do is they have tanks that are, they can range in size between hot tub and about the size of a hot tub or a swimming pool. Tanks that are, in a grid. And I've actually been to a fish farm before, and it was very interesting because as I was walking up to these pools, they were just mucky black, just black. It was just the most filthy water I'd ever seen. And but as you're walking up, you realize that there is a lot of activity, like there is movement happening in that water. And it's because they've got the fish packed in there so tightly, they can't swim in a straight line. They're just swimming all on top of each other. And they're living in their own waste. That muck is their waste and the fish food that they're feeding them, and it just all gets mucked up in there. It's just awful. Fish farms are notorious for dumping just an arsenal of chemicals and antibiotics and all kinds of other pharmaceuticals into the water to try and keep the fish healthy until they're up, to the weight that they want them for slaughter. It's really a terrible system, and these animals live in just confinement and misery. And the area around fish farms are often filthy, and the runoff from the waste and everything pollutes the area around a fish farm. And sea lice is another huge problem. Sea lice is not really that big of a problem out in the ocean because the fish are spread out, but sea lice just thrive in this confinement situation because the next host fish is so close. And sea lice, if it's not treated, and they don't treat it in the fish farms, it can eat away at the fish's flesh, eat away around their eyes and their face. It's very painful, just horrible to see these fish all eaten up. And fish farms, they expect a 10 to 30% loss in the fish before they get to their market weight. They know that many are going to die just because of the horrible conditions. It's really no solution. Most restaurant fish is from fish farms, so we really need to avoid fish farmed fish and just stop eating fish altogether.
What does our diet have to do with climate change?
So our diet and our agriculture is very much connected to what's happening to the climate and climate disruption. It's a huge piece of the puzzle of all the factors going into climate change. There's, so many different aspects to it. But what we're learning and what we're finding is that animal agriculture, in particular, is very impactful on climate change, much more impactful than plant farming. We're seeing that across the board. Not only do the animals themselves contribute to climate change just through their rumination, so the cows and other ruminants, goats and sheep will it's mostly their burping, their chewing of the cud. It creates methane naturally. But because we have bred them in such huge numbers, this methane is contributing to the climate change, climate disruption. But beyond just that, there's so many other aspects. So all the excrement that is piled up on the dairy farm, on the chicken farms, that creates nitrous oxide and other greenhouse gases that are absolutely impactful as well on global warming. So all that excrement and just the energy intensive production of animal farming. Animal farming creates so much more energy waste, fossil fuel use than compared to plant farming. There's, you know, the mechanized processes of the dairy facility, of the slaughterhouse, having to wash down all that equipment, and just the mechanization, the refrigeration, the freezing. There's so much more energy in the production of animal products compared to plants. So we really, you know, if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, you want to help with climate change, with climate disruption, and actually environmental organizations are really starting to come on board. They're really starting to see that this is a huge piece of the climate change puzzle and what things that we need to do, and that is to reduce and eliminate animal products and switch to a global plant-based diet. It's going to really, really help. And the beautiful thing about it is that we won't need government involvement. We don't need, you know, policy change. We don't need billions of dollars. All it takes is making a different choice at the grocery store. That's all. That's all. And we can all do that. We can all make a difference, and we can all have a wonderful, really impactful, you know, impact to change and improve climate change and climate disruption. So I hope we make that choice.
Please describe the difference in an individual carbon footprint when someone decides to buy organic versus when someone decides to become vegan.
Organic, I'll start by saying that organic, of all the labels we, you know, see out there that are supposed to be better for the environment, we see free range, we see sustainable, there's, you know, labels out there. None of those labels are regulated. None of those labels really mean anything. Organic is really the only one that does have some standards, some impact. And it can be a lot of impact, especially with plant farming. With plant farming, organic is a great thing, reducing our pesticide use and synthetics and all that. However, when we're talking about animal products, so the only difference with an animal product that is organic is that the feed that is fed to the animals is organic, pesticide free, and the animals are generally drug free as well. It's the only difference. There's so many other impacts and inputs with dairy, with animal products that are not addressed with organic. The methane that's coming from the cows themselves, the nitrous oxide coming from the piles of excrement, the you know, energy intensiveness of the process. None of that is addressed in organic, the organic label. So I'll give an example. You could be at the store and you see there's a tomato that's not organic and maybe not even local. It came from Mexico, and you think, oh my goodness, that tomato has got a huge impact. You know, I won't go for that. How about this local dairy product that's organic? Organic local dairy product. That's got to have less impact, right? No, no, not at all, because animal products are just so much more intensive and energy wise, impact wise. There's so many more factors that go into a dairy product and that make it more impactful environmentally. So Unfortunately, just because something is organic does not necessarily mean that it's better for the environment, for the animals, for your health, for anything. So the best thing to do is to reduce and eliminate animal products altogether and eat organic plants, organic plant food.
Please explain how a dairy cow is grown from the beginning to their death.
So a dairy cow's life is very sad and very miserable from the very beginning because he or she is going to be dragged away from their mother at birth. And she will never know the love and security of a mother. She will always be scared and mourning for her mother. It's a horrible way to start life. If she's a little girl, she will be taken to the other side of the dairy farm or far away from her mother and put in a calf hutch. They're kind of like it looks like a white plastic doghouse. She'll be chained there or pinned there, separated from other cows, from her mother, from anyone, in all weather, whether it be freezing, whether it be hot, doesn't matter, all conditions of weather. And she will be fed a soy formula or a non-milk formula. Believe it or not, they don't even get milk. Sometimes there is some low quality milk that's mixed in, but she'll get a formula that that is not the natural, where she should be drinking her mother's milk, from her mother's udder. She'll never experience that. And she will be raised that way until she is old enough for her first artificial insemination. These cows are kept pregnant because, of course, when they are pregnant is the only time that they are lactating, and when they give birth, then they will give milk. And so artificial insemination is a horrible process. It's, that none of these animals breed naturally anymore. Hardly any of the species breed naturally, and certainly not cows. For artificial insemination, there are steers, bulls, and other areas that are masturbated for their sperm. And then the sperm is put into a sperm gun. It's what the device is called, a very long metal device that is inserted into her vagina. And then the farmer will actually insert his arm into the cow's rectum to manipulate her inside as they insert the sperm, so that there's more chance of her being impregnated. It's just really such a violation and such a brutal process. And I encourage anyone that wants to, learn about it to go to YouTube and watch a video of artificial insemination. It's really a horrible process. And so she is pregnant. The conditions are terrible. There's confinement, there is misery, there is very little natural life that she's experiencing, hardly ever in the outside. And as soon as she gives birth, that baby's taken away, just like she was, and she does not get to experience being a mother, having that protective, loving exchange with her offspring. It's horrible. And then she will be milked numerous times a day. They give way more milk than they would naturally. They have been manipulated, genetically manipulated, to give so much more milk than what would be natural. And it's, it's a brutal, horrible process that she will have to endure for a few years, but it will still be a fraction of her lifespan. Cows can live to be 20 to 25 years old. She will go to slaughter before her fifth birthday. Dairy cows rarely see their third or fourth or fifth birthday. So it's a really horrible, horrible system that we support with every yogurt, with every, cream cheese, with every cottage cheese. And all of these dairy products can be found non-dairy now from plant sources. There's so much wonderful non-dairy milks. If you don't like one, try another. There's almond milk and oat milk and hemp milk and just anything you can think of, coconut milk. It's truly amazing the options that are out there. So I really encourage everyone to try non-dairy milks, non-dairy yogurts, and please don't support the horrible, torturous dairy industry.
Please explain how an egg-laying chicken is raised from the beginning to their death.
So for egg-laying chickens, the beginning of their life is in a hatchery. And a hatchery is just a brutal, industrial, horrible place where they are hatched into the world without a mother hen comforting them, letting them know that everything's okay, without a warm nest around them. There's just machinery and cold, and it's just horrible. And immediately they're thrown into this world of conveyor belts and the workers handling them roughly and throwing them about. Um, they are often sexed. So the workers determine their sex by rubbing between their legs. The baby females will be tossed into one chute, baby males into another chute. Baby males in the egg laying industry, they, because they are the genetic strand of chicken that is raised for egg laying, they don't grow profitably enough for meat. They don't grow big enough, fast enough to be slaughtered for meat profitably. So they are just a waste product of the industry. And these baby males will go to be killed in brutal ways by the billions. They are thrown into dumpsters in the backs of the hatcheries to just die of exposure, to die suffocating on the weight of their brothers. Some are taken down conveyor belts and dropped into these huge maceration machines, like big blenders that just grind them up alive. There's other horrible devices where they will put them into a big metal box that is electrocuted and electrocute them to death. I mean, it's, I just can't believe that there's industries that think of horrible ways to kill newborn baby chicks. What a horrible world, you know? So if she is a female, then she goes down a different chute, and she will be raised to be a layer hen, a hen that is raised for egg laying. And there's confinement. These birds are kept, indoors their whole lives. They never see the light of day. Birds love to sunbathe. They love to spread out their wings and let the sun get on their wings. And they love to be outside and in nature. They're very busy. They're very vibrant birds. They're always, curious and moving around. They can do none of that in this confinement. They're just tightly confined in these buildings with nothing to do, nowhere to go. It's absolutely maddening and miserable. Uh, and they will live like that for, again, a short period of their life, only maybe 2 to 3 years of their lifespan. That could be 10 to 15 years. And they will go to a brutal, brutal slaughter where they're hung upside down, their throat is slit, that takes agonizing minutes for them to bleed out, where they're struggling and fighting for their lives. It's hard to imagine how miserable an egg-laying chicken's life is. So please avoid eggs in any way that you can. We don't need eggs. I haven't eaten eggs for over 30 years. I'm alive and thriving and healthy. So we don't need them in our diet. And we can live much happier and healthier, egg-free, and so can the chickens.
What does our diet have to do with deforestation, desertification, ocean acidification, species extinction, and other environmental issues?
Yeah, it's true. Animal agriculture touches on a lot of environmental issues. It really, any environmental issue you can think of animal agriculture has an impact, whether we're talking about water use and water pollution, land use, air pollution, deforestation. All those things are impacted by animal agriculture. Let's take deforestation, for instance. Deforestation in the Amazon is primarily because of animal agriculture, because of raising cows for meat. And also growing the grain that goes to feed animals, not only cows, but also pigs and chickens. They're raising grains, corn, soy that goes to animal feed, that becomes animal feed and goes all over the world to feed animals. So, you know, we are destroying the lungs of the planet. The planet needs trees to absorb carbon. I mean, that's one of our biggest, what's called a carbon sink, where we're actually drawing carbon out of the atmosphere to improve the climate change situation. That's in the forest. That's greenery and bushes and trees that draws carbon out of the atmosphere. And the Amazon is one of the biggest carbon sinks we have on the planet. And it's being destroyed because of animal agriculture. Here in the US, we certainly have the same problem. We have deforestation happening on a rapid rate because of grazing animals. And even now, it's happening because of the shift that we're seeing in the industry with local and regenerative grazing and all these kind of more sustainable methods of raising animals. Well, guess what they're doing? They're actually having to clear wetlands and, you know, wild areas to graze these animals for free ranging and local animal products. So there's something, you know, not right there. We need our green spaces. We need those trees and those wetlands and those prairies and areas to be green and absorbing carbon. We could actually reforest hundreds of thousands of acres of land if we would switch to a plant-based diet here in the US. In the US, we use so much of our land to graze animals and then also to grow the grains that go to feed the animals. All of that land could be reforested, rewilded, brought back to its natural state to absorb carbon. We could do this so easily by just switching to plant-based diet, because plant-based agriculture uses so much less land than animal agriculture. So it touches on so many things, and also species extinction, wildlife conflict. All of that can be relieved and improved if we would switch to plant-based eating.
What does our diet have to do with water shortages?
Yeah, water is another huge issue. We're wasting so much water in animal agriculture. Animal agriculture requires just so much more water. There's been one study that said it takes 8 times as much water to produce the same amount of food for a meat eater than for a vegan. 8 times the water. So we're using lots of water by having to water the animals directly. The animals have to drink water. There's also tons of water wasted in washing down all the equipment, washing down the dairy facilities, washing down the slaughterhouses. All of that would be eliminated with a plant-based diet. And then add to that the water that we have to use to grow the grain to feed the animals. Again, you know, gallons and gallons and gallons of water. So animal products just take so much more water, and it's really a precious natural resource. Our clean water, our aquifers are draining. We have very little left, and we need to be careful about our water use. There's definitely, I mean, people, I've heard it said that there will be wars possibly waged over water in the future, because it's so important. It's such a precious resource, and this is a huge way that we could start reducing our water waste, and that is with the plant-based diet. It's also been said, I'll leave it on this one, that a meat eater could just turn on their shower and leave it running for a year. And that's how much water they waste by not going vegan, not being vegan. So a vegan could turn that shower off and not waste that water for that whole year that the meat eater has their shower running. That's how much water they're wasting by eating animal products. So again, you know, if we want to have a clean, livable, climate stable planet, we need to stop eating animal products and transition to a plant-based diet.
Do we have enough planetary resources to provide the option of free range space for all animals? What would be the potential impacts of that scenario?
Yeah, so it really is an issue, the free ranging of animals, this trend that we're seeing. It's very popular, and I understand the impulse. What we've been exposing is the confinement of animals, and this is one of the huge problems of animal agriculture, as it is now. Industrial animal agriculture is that we're confining these animals in buildings, and so the impulse is to give the animals more space. I understand that, and it's a good idea, but unfortunately, the reality is something different. So let's think about a cage-free egg facility right now. A cage-free egg facility could have, let's say, 10,000 birds in a confinement building, and that's not unusual, actually. 10,000 birds, believe it or not. So they have this big long confinement building that's on half an acre of land. They could fit 10,000 birds on half an acre, pretty much, give or take. So, you got this confinement of all these birds. Now, let's say that this farmer says, "Oh, I want to go free range. I want to give these birds a bit more space, a little more space." To do that, that farmer would need 10, 20 acres of land for the same amount of animals. He would need so much more space. So what happens to that space? Well, then he starts cutting the trees, and oh, there's a stream over here. We got to drain the stream, and you're moving into wild spaces in these local areas that it's just not necessary. Why do it? Why not just go egg free, and chicken flesh free? It'd be so much better. We really, and here's the bottom line with it. We just don't have the space. We don't have the land to do it. Right now, free ranging is a niche market for a few elite buyers. We can't scale it up. We don't have the space. We don't have the ability to do that. There is a pig pork farmer that on their website, they say that they give the pigs, I think it was 10, what was it? It was 5 pigs per 10 acres. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was very few animals for a lot of acres of land. 5 pigs don't feed many people. It does not feed many people. If they wanted to scale up to actually, feed half the town that they're connected to, there's just no way to do it. We cannot scale this up. There's not enough space. It's been said that we would need closer to 5 planet Earths to be able to free range all the animals that are in confinement right now. So this is not the solution. This is not the answer. It's not the direction we need to be going in. We need to be reducing animal products and eliminating animal products. We cannot scale up this local free range thing.
Please explain how a chicken bred for its meat is raised from the beginning to their death.
So a chicken raised for their meat is similar to the egg-laying hen in that they are going to be hatched in a hatchery. Again, they're these very terrible, no nest, no warm, loving mother, just thrust into the world of conveyor belts and machinery. They are have manipulations happen to them, and they're injected with vaccines and antibiotics and all kinds of things. The poor little things don't know what's happening to them. There's, these places, these hatcheries are just so brutal. I actually had an investigator, or it wasn't an investigator, it was someone who actually did work in one of these facilities, and they said that when there was little chicks that were, and it happened that they were just not quite out of the shell yet, like, because a mother would help them to get the shell off their bodies and stuff, and they don't have that help, or if they were deformed in some way, or if, and this happened often, they got caught in the machinery, like their wing got caught in the machinery or something, and they, had an injury. And she said that she saw little chicks with like their wings just hanging off, or a wing that had been ripped off. And these chicks, they're not deemed sellable or usable. So they just take the chicks and just throw them on the floor, just toss them on the floor to suffer and die. And then at the end of the shift, they'd be swept up and taken out to the garbage. It's just so brutal. So that's, that's where they start their lives in these horrible hatcheries. And then a broiler chicken will be in a floor confinement situation similar to cage-free eggs. Same thing, basically just a windowless warehouse, big building where there's just thousands of birds, hundreds or thousands of birds on the floor, confined in there. Again, never seeing the sun, never getting to, experience bushes or life, or it's just this really boring, miserable, horrible existence. And then they'll go to a brutal slaughter. The workers have to be very brutal in the way they move them around when they are dealing with them, because they have to be fast. They're working on the clock, and they will grab the chickens, 3 to 4 in one hand by their legs, and pull them up, upside down, and shove them into the cages. And there's injuries from that. Sometimes their legs will dislocate, or their wings will be injured, damaged. It's just horrible what they have to experience. And then the slaughter is just absolutely brutal. It's really miserable for them, and all for chicken meat, which can be so easily replaced now. There's such wonderful plant-based chicken options out there. There's Gardein has a great chicken nuggets and at the store, and then you can find it also in restaurants. Chicken-free chicken food, plant-based meats are pretty easy to find now, and there's going to be more and more. So support those so that they will thrive, those businesses, because they are the more compassionate, nonviolent businesses, and we want a compassionate, nonviolent world. So let's not support chicken flesh.
Please explain how a turkey is raised from the beginning to their death.
Yeah, turkeys have a similar situation to chickens, in that they are hatched also in a hatchery. And I've already described the hatchery, so we'll not go into detail there. But turkeys actually have an added horrible thing that happens to them when they're babies. So just like chickens are debeaked, turkeys actually, so turkeys, when they are stressed or scared, they will use their talons. They have sharp nails that are called talons on their feet, and they will use their talons to defend themselves, and rightfully so. If they are feeling cornered or scared, they'll use their talons. And so workers can get injured because the workers have to move quickly, and they can't, they don't approach in any kind of respectful or gentle way. So the industry actually detoes turkeys. So when they're babies, they're first hatched, the chicks, they cut off the first 1 or 2 digits of their toes. This can be incredibly painful. Of course, I mean, it would be like cutting off the digits of your finger, like cutting your finger right in the middle. It's very painful. It causes deformities in their feet. They're often lame. Turkeys are often walk a little wonky. They have a hard time walking. They're limp and they're lame because of this, and it can cause lifelong pain in their feet. And oftentimes they don't walk a lot. Some actually it becomes so painful that they can't walk. And then they'll starve to death, not being able to get to food. It's just a horrible added horror that happens to turkeys, the detowing. And if you go to a sanctuary and you meet a turkey, there's lots of turkeys that live on farm sanctuaries, and never is there a problem with them using their talons. That, when they are treated with respect, when they feel safe, then they're not going to use their talons. So it's not, the industry could just be respectful and gentle and give them the space and agency that they deserve, and then they wouldn't have to detow them. But going back to that it's a business and they want to make money, they need to make money. So that's why they have to confine them. That's why they have to move quickly. And that's why they cut off their toes and detow them. It's really horrible and cruel. And turkeys will, of course, again, live a very short life. They're up to market weight very quickly, within just a few months, and they will go to a brutal slaughter, where they're hung upside down. Their bodies are very heavy. It can be very painful for them to be hung by their leg joints, because of the weight of their bodies, and their throat is slit. It takes minutes for them to bleed out. It's really just a horrible death. And again, so unnecessary. I haven't eaten turkey for 30 years and I am healthy and thriving. It's unnecessary. And we can eat turkey free easily, and let those beautiful, beautiful birds live a free and long life.
Please explain how a pig is raised from the beginning to their death.
So pigs, in the pork industry, one of the real horrible things that is done to pigs is the fowering crate, is what it's called. And this is for the pregnant pigs, the pig mothers that are the breeding pigs that are kept pregnant to breed the pigs. And they are kept in these it's not even really a crate, it's like a metal arm that is holding them down on their sides, so the piglets feed and are able to drink their mother's milk. But she's not really able to interact with them. She's not really able to protect them. It's really a horrible confinement situation, and the piglets are taken away much earlier than they should be from their mothers. And you know, some are considered runts, are too small to be profitably raised for meat, and they're just killed. There's the story of a woman who was actually on it was a very small scale pasture raised pork farm. So it was supposed to be one of the good ones, one of the happy pig farms, with pasture raised and stuff on the label. And she was touring this farm, and there was some piglets, some babies. And there was a little one that was very tiny, that was a runt. And they were going to kill this baby. And how the industry generally kills a runt is, one of the ways is what's called thumping. And it's where they just throw the baby on the ground or throw the baby against the wall and hope that the first time kills them. It's so awful, and that is just industry standard, to throw baby piglets to their death, to crush their skulls. This woman heard that this baby was going to be killed, and and she said, "Well, can I take that baby?" And they were like, "Sure. He's worthless. He's not going to, be big enough to make enough money for us." And so she took that little baby pig and brought him to Farm Sanctuary, and he grew to be a wonderful, huge, beautiful pig. And he's living out his life on a farm sanctuary. But his brothers and sisters are unfortunately living a brutal life in the industry, where they're confined. Again, no outside, no natural life. And they are killed in a brutal way at the slaughterhouse. Again, throat slitting is not a painless or quick way to die. It is a terrible way to die, having your throat slit and being bled out. So again, all of this violence is so unnecessary. We don't have to be part of it. We don't have to take part. And we can support a new way, support a nonviolent, compassionate world by living vegan.
Is the number of vegans growing?
Well, yeah, it is. It's slow and steady, but it's steady. That's one of the wonderful things. So we are now, there have been some pretty good numbers done. It's sometimes the numbers are kind of all over the place depending on the study and the survey and how they ask the question. But the information we have now is that there are 3% vegans in the US. And that has grown dramatically in the last 3 decades, sorry, in the last 3 decades. That really has grown, which is really wonderful to see. The other thing that clues us in is things like clues us into the fact that veganism is really growing and taking off, is that the search on Google for vegetarian and vegetarian always had the higher number of searches between the two words. That changed exactly 10 years ago in 2011, and the word vegan overtook the searches in Google for the above the word vegetarian. And now for the last 10 years, the word vegan has been more searched than the word vegetarian. And we're seeing so much growth in the industry as far as the vegan products and the food that's out there, the change in the restaurant industry for more vegan options. It's really heartening to see the growth. And like I said, it's been a real steady growth, and that's good. There hasn't been a lot of fluctuation up and down, just steady growth. And we're going to continue that steady growth on into the future. I have great hope that we will embrace our compassionate nature and create the vegan world that we all want to see for the animals, for the planet, and for ourselves.
What should we feed our dogs and cats? Can they be vegan?
So yes, they can be. Dogs and cats are actually a bit different. Dogs are omnivores and cats are carnivores. So dogs are much easier to be vegan. They can be vegan pretty easily. They are omnivores like us. They thrive on plant-based diet, no problem. There's lots of vegan dog foods out there that are really wonderful. The formulas are improving every year. They're getting more and more nutritious and better for the animals. And there's a lot of great vegan dog foods to try. So there's no reason your dog can't be vegan. Now, cats, it's a little different. Cats are carnivores, and they need an enzyme, an amino acid called taurine. And so taurine is very important in their diet. We don't need it. You only find taurine in animals, in animal products. So they do need that taurine. There is vegan cat food. And again, like I said, the formulas are improving every year. They're getting better and better. I would say talk to your vet. If you want to switch over to a vegan cat food. Cats are a little trickier with it. So you want to be very observant and very careful and be sure that they're doing okay on the vegan diet, but it can be done. And I know a lot of cats that are on vegan diets out there and that are thriving and healthy. Another exciting thing that's happening is cultured meat, cell-based meat. And why I'm excited about it is for pet food. I would really love for that industry to focus on pet food so that the cats and dogs in our lives can have, especially the cats because they need it, have meat that came from the growing of the cultured cells and not directly from slaughtered animals. So I'm hoping that that will be a cat food option soon.
If we raise animals in our backyard and then slaughter them ourselves, is this humane? What about backyard eggs?
Yeah, so it's kind of two different questions. I'm going to start with the backyard egg part of it, and then we'll get into the slaughter. So backyard eggs, this is a trend certainly that's happening now. People are really getting into this. There's kind of a do-it-yourself upsurge happening, especially during the pandemic. People are planting gardens, getting chickens, wanting to do more of their own food growing and gathering. So having backyard chickens, I believe that this can be an ethical situation to have backyard chickens, but only as your companion animals, only as your friends, just like your dog and cat. If you are getting a chicken just for the eggs, then you're commodifying that animal. There's the only reason you're getting that animal is for a product, a food, and so I'm afraid that that animal's welfare will be compromised in some way. I think we have to look at animals, as living, breathing, sentient animals because they are. And so, but that said, I think we can have companion animals. In fact, I think we really need to dismantle the idea of who is a companion animal, and not limit it to just dogs and cats, because there are people now that are living with chickens, living with pigs, that are coming into the house, that are part of the family, and it's a beautiful situation. So that can be wonderful. There needs to be criteria met, though. One thing is that you need to rescue that animal. We don't want to buy an animal ever. You don't want to ever give money to an industry, even the local feed store or on Craigslist. They got those chickens from hatcheries. And I've already described the horrors of the hatcheries. That's where all those chicks come from. So we don't want to ever buy a chicken or a chick, but you can rescue. And there's lots of farm sanctuaries that are offering adoptions for chickens. You could try your local animal shelter. They often have chickens that come through. You can put your name on a list or something that you are wanting a chicken. And once you take that chicken in, then just like your dog and cat, you've got to be sure that everything is in place for them. They need a predator-proof enclosure so that predators can't get to them. You need to be sure you understand what their food, the best food for them is. You've got to keep their coop clean and clean their coop often. So all those things, need to happen. And also veterinary care. And that's something that you really should consider, because unfortunately, chickens, because of the egg industry and the chicken flesh industry, have been genetically manipulated, that they never, it's very rare for them to live out their lives. And so when they do, and they're able to be rescued and live their lives out, they often have a lot of health issues. So you need to have a vet that knows what they're doing with a chicken, knows chickens, and be able to have the money for veterinary care. So to be aware of that as well. And of course, let them live their lives out in peace. So I think you can have a backyard chicken. That's just wonderful. However, we don't want to eat the eggs. I do not advise eating the eggs. And even if it's this wonderful situation and you're caring for the animal, I still feel that we should not eat eggs, and here's why. We really need to stop looking at eggs as food. It's not food. It's not human food. We have to stop thinking of eggs and dairy and flesh as food. As long as we think of these things as food, there's going to be exploitation and suffering of animals somewhere. We need to have a vegan ethic. And if you are eating your eggs at home, It might be a little easier to, oh, well, my friend bakes some muffins, she has eggs in them. Oh, I'm an egg eater. You're identifying as an egg eater. It might be a little easier to eat those muffins with eggs. It's important for us to identify as vegan and to hold that stance, and to gently and lovingly say to your friend, yeah, thank you so much, but I don't eat eggs. We really have to stop looking at animal products as food, because it's not. It's the commodification and exploitation of another sentient being's body. And as long as we look at that, look at those things as food, there will be that exploitation. And the other part of the question was slaughter, backyard slaughter. Now, this one seems much more obvious to me as to what the problems are and why it's wrong. We should not take another animal's life prematurely of their full lifespan. It seems very obvious to me, and I hope eventually will be obvious to everyone, that this is wrong. These animals want to live. They want to see another day of life. They want to experience another day of sunshine. They want to breed. They want to love and have friendships. And it's every animal wants to live. Every animal fights death. I mean, that's another thing that we don't realize. But when you look at the slaughterhouse footage, those animals know. They know what's happening to them. They know what's coming, and they are fighting for their lives. They're struggling and fighting to live. So we have no right to take their lives. And to think that a backyard slaughter or a small scale situation would be any more humane, unfortunately, it's just not. It's just not. And I actually, in my book, The Ultimate Betrayal, I have accounts from backyard farmers and backyard slaughterers of these botched slaughter attempts, of people attempting to slaughter animals. It's not easy to kill an animal, and these animals writhing in pain, and then kind of freaking out on the situation. I mean, it's just awful. So to think that it's any more humane because it's in someone's backyard, it's not. And there's just no reason to think that. And we shouldn't be taking their lives to begin with. We can live healthy, thriving on a plant-based diet. There's no need to kill. There's no need to take their lives.
Why was it important for you to come back and speak at the Real Truth About Health conference?
Well, I was very honored to be asked back, and I'm grateful to do it. I love that it's still happening, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic, but wonderful that it's all gone online. So that's great. I really give props to the organizers for that. And it's important to get this information out there. I'm so grateful to you for listening, for caring, and for wanting to improve your health, to improve the health of the planet, and to help animals. So it's a wonderful thing that this conference is going on, continuing strong online, and I'm just honored to be here.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to have you, and thank you for all of your meaningful work and the difference you're making, and just especially for educating all of us and our audience. And we really appreciate all of your time today, Hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Be well.